Good afternoon. Australia 2 has done the impossible. It's won the America's Cup. The yacht designed by Ben Lexon and owned by the Alan Bond Syndicate has broken a stranglehold of more than 130 years by winning the Cup the hardest possible way, 4 races to 3. And the Australians won the final sudden death race also in the hardest possible way. After winning the start, Australia 2 led halfway up the first leg, but then the crew blundered and let the Americans in front, and they led until the second last leg. But then, glory time for the Australians. In the second last leg, they played the fluctuating breeze to the ultimate. They outsailed the Americans to the second last mark and then covered them to the finish. The Americans couldn't believe it, and the Australians were probably feeling the same. Here's how Kerry O'Brien felt at dockside after the finish.
It's all happening here as Australia 2 comes back to dock. An extraordinary moment in Australian sporting history. The climax to the day that David beat Goliath on the waters of Newport. Certainly it's a moment that will be printed indelibly onto the minds of John Bertrand and his crew of 10. What an amazing high they must be on right now.
Noble in defeat, Dennis Conner and the crew of Liberty lined up at the entrance to the Aussie dock. As Australia 2 edged in, it was pandemonium. Newport has never seen such a celebration. The chant went up to unmask the keel with its radical fins. Even skipper John Bertrand joined the cry. With superb theatrical timing, Alan Bond stood like Moses parting the waves, and the keel became public property at last. Wives, girlfriends, parents, children and politicians struggled through the pack to touch the hems of these new Aussie heroes. Jim Hardy, the man who carried the fight through the last 2 challenges and helped pave the way this time, had his moment of triumph at last. There were thousands on the docks and thousands more outside, pressing against the flimsy cyclone wire fencing, gambling with disaster. The setting was extraordinary. Overhead were hot air balloons, helicopters, light aircraft and the blimp. For Liberty and Dennis Conner there was also a welcome, but the man who lost the Cup for America after 132 years must have felt numb. Victory was sweet to savour as the triumphant Australians arrived for their press conference.
What makes your boat so fast downwind?
God.
Ben, was your boat speed today equal to Liberty?
The whole boat speed was equal to Liberty, but we were pushing to beat Dennis Conner, I tell you.
Were you worried on that?
Yeah, I was worried about Dennis Conner.
You say about Dennis, not about the boat.
Dennis saved the Cup last time, and he deserves a lot of credit for trying to save it this time.
You felt even though you had the faster boat that he was somehow, some way he might pull it out.
He's a tricky little devil.
Today, Australia 2 was just a better boat, and they beat it, and we have no excuses. So I'd like to, at this point, congratulate Alan Bond and Australia 2 on their superb effort over the summer. They proved that they were an outstanding boat, and today was their day.
You know, an event like this wouldn't be possible unless you had a great competitor, and Dennis Conner and his crew showed they were great competitors today, and they fought all the way as well.
Yep.
Yep.
And to Dennis and his crew, I would like to say, if we had to win it, you certainly put up a great effort and a great fight, and I'm sorry it had to be you. They say that something good comes along once in your lifetime, and certainly something good has come along for Australia. I've never seen a country so united under its one flag. All the people from one end of the country to another have supported this challenge. And this is what gave the determination to John and this fine crew of people here to go wrong when the odds seemed impossible. It was not an easy campaign, and they really fought hard, as I knew they would. But it's been done one thing that I can't imagine that it would when we began, and that notwithstanding we've won the Cup, I believe it's brought the people of America and the people of Australia closer together.
Alan Bond said to me many times that the Americans would never give you the America's Cup. You would have to fight for it, tooth and nail, to win the America's Cup. And we certainly had to do that. And the final race today was an incredible grand final to an incredible summer for 1983. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This may seem like a very obvious question, but is this the greatest day in your whole life?
Yes, without question it is.
John, same for you.
It's a fulfillment of a dream which has come true, and it's certainly the greatest day of my life, yes.
The question on everybody's lips was the one no one could answer. When would the Cup be unbolted and handed over? But the New York Yacht Club was notable by its absence. The partying went on throughout the night. The city will be suffering a giant hangover by morning. The last scene in this incredible tableau will probably be played out in New York, when a battered silver jug becomes the property of the Royal Perth Yacht Club for at least the next 3 years.
Kerry O'Brien reporting, and of course the Royal Perth Yacht Club is more than willing to be hosts of the next America's Cup. And in case you're wondering, Alan Bond has declared the America's Cup will not be renamed the Australia Cup. He says he doesn't want to tamper with 132 years of tradition. And I'm sure the $16 million he's spent winning the Cup is something he's not worrying about right now. Right after this break in our 7 National News special, how Australia did the impossible. The America's Cup Series, the Yacht Australia 2 realised this nation a dream. The winged keel yacht curved gently around the New York Yacht Club committee boat, 41 seconds ahead of Liberty, to lift the trophy that had never been lost by the United States in its 132-year history. Here's how Paul Marshall saw the contest.
This was it. No more lay-days, protests or fights over the keel. Today it would just be Australia against Liberty for the America's Cup. On the Australia dock this morning, an impressive send-off. Federal Treasurer Paul Keating was there, so too former Prime Minister Malcolm Fraser. There wasn't much wind out on the course, but the 10-minute gun did go on schedule and the 2 boats shaped up for the start. Australia was in control with about 2 minutes to the gun when the postponement was signalled, just like it was on Saturday. There'd been a wind shift, not much of one, but it was another hour before the race was restarted. This time, Liberty was where she wanted to be and crossed the line 8 seconds in front. That didn't matter because the Australians soon took the lead. But here they made what was probably their only mistake. They didn't cover Connor. He picked up a wind shift, and Liberty rounded the first mark 29 seconds ahead.
There's been 3 main turning points in this regatta. First of all, it was Dennis Connor in the 5th race not covering Australia when she broke the start. That very one mistake, I think, has cost him the America's Cup. He led 37 seconds at the start, did not cover, lost the race. Today, John Bertrand broke away, did not cover, or had a loose cover, almost cost him the race.
Liberty was in front and looked like staying there. The Cup, it seemed, was safe. Liberty had a 45-second lead at the second mark. Australia cut that to 23 at the next. But at the 4th, the Americans were ahead by 57 seconds. But then on the square run under Spinnaker, Connor made what was probably his only mistake. He didn't cover Australia. She picked up a wind shift, and suddenly it was a race again. Australia was catching up, closing the gap, and finally hitting the front. She rounded the 5th mark, 21 seconds clear of Liberty, and suddenly the bolts on the America's Cup didn't seem so tight.
4th leg, Dennis Conner didn't cover, let John Bertrand, Australia 2, back in.
Dennis Conner had no choice on this final windward leg. He had to try a tacking duel to force Australia to make a mistake. But there were none. John Bertrand and his crew had their prize in sight, and with every tack they moved a little further ahead. Finally, Conner tried to carry Australia off into the spectator fleet. Australia covered him all the way, pulling out at the last minute to head for the line. Dennis Conner, Liberty and the New York Yacht Club were beaten. Australia ducked around the stern of the committee boat, and then as the gentleman from the New York Yacht Club looked down at her, she undid the bolts and took the America's Cup. Winning margin, 41 seconds. The longest winning streak in sporting history was broken. The Australians had done it. There are probably no words that describe how John Bertrand and his crew felt. Alan Bond, Ben Lexon, Warren Jones, Jim Hardy, they all came over to the boat to join the celebrations. Somehow the giant Australian flag, now flying from Australia's mast, seemed to say it all.
The conditions were as fickle as they were to windward, and we're able to get 2 wind shifts, which Liberty did not on the square run, and as a result get back in the boat race and go on to cross Liberty by maybe 10 feet, and as a result get the effectively the inside overlap thereafter.
There was an international jury that spent many, many hours watching that all the rules were adhered to, and they did a fantastic job also. As this is the last time I will be here on this forum, I'd like to thank the cooperation of the press at large. Without your support, the people of the world would not have known of this great event, and I do sincerely thank you. And now over to John Bertrand.
John Bertrand.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is something that has been a dream for me and my family, Raza and the children. And right now I feel very humble, but very proud to be involved with the group of people that I've been associated with. I think that it's been a fight back of a lifetime in the fact that we're able to come down from obviously low odds to go on to win the America's Cup. And I feel very proud that I've been able to, in all honesty, contribute something to the Australia 2 crew and also to Australia as a whole. The support that I've personally received from Jim Hardy, Alan Bond, Warren Jones, John Longley, to name a few, Ben Lexon, Tom Snackenberg, it just goes on and on and on. Quite obviously, a campaign by a large group of people. The organisation required to win the America's Cup is very, very large indeed, and it requires a lot of planning and a lot of very, very high quality people, very level-headed, and I've certainly enjoyed the backing of some quite incredible people in this campaign.
The normally ice-cold John Bertrand, Australian Olympic yachtsman, was sailing his 4th America's Cup and his first as skipper. Interesting to note that as the tension reached unbelievable heights before the final race was finally sailed, he kept his cool, claiming it was all, quote, melodrama, unquote. And as for Alan Bond, he was once the mouth from the West, young, loud, brash, and to the Americans, quite unsuited to winning the America's Cup. But in 1983, he's been comparatively well modulated, and particularly in victory. Let's see how the New York Yacht Club comes back. After this break in the 7 National News special, how we feel. Led the nation in celebration of the America's Cup victory, and as Ken Begg reports, some of the larrikin Prime Minister surfaced at the Royal Perth Yacht Club.
The America's Cup was well and truly ours by the time Bob Hawke reached the Royal Perth Yacht Club just after dawn. The sun was well over the yardarm, and so for that matter were one or two of the revellers.
Are you going to declare a public holiday?
Yes, Henry. No one would want to work today at any rate, would they?
They'd been up all night. So too had the Prime Minister. They'd also been celebrating, of course, and for a teetotaler, this was a challenging occasion. Not that that stopped one or two giving the Prime Minister an alcoholic spray. This was one occasion where spontaneity just took over. And this was also an occasion where this Prime Minister shines.
I tell you what, any boss who sacks anyone for not turning up today is a bum.
It was just fortuitous that Mr. Hawke found himself in Perth today. The Cabinet meeting had been scheduled a long time ago. But what an amazing piece of luck for a man who, for the moment, at least, is looking a winner.
Oh, waltzing Matilda, you'll come a waltzing Matilda with me.
How do you think the Americans will react? Will this test their alliance?
Well, I may have to ring the President and tell him that war's not on, that the ANZAS treaty covers situations like this. No, I believe that the Americans, from what I saw when I was there in June, two things. They didn't want to lose it, but it was quite clear, and this was before the elimination finals, it was quite clear that if anyone was to take it from them, they wanted to be Australia.
After Liberty began in front and stayed there until the 4th marker, enthusiasm in the bar began to wane. 57 seconds, it seemed, was too big a lead for Australia 2 to catch. But then the sun began to rise, and with it came a second win for the audience as Australia 2 made its move. It was now 10-6, and 20 minutes later, Australia had rounded the 6th and final marker, 21 seconds ahead of Liberty. And then came the final leg, and the moment everyone had been waiting for.
As Beryl Bertrand said, the start of an era for Australia and Australia 2.
And as you could tell by that shot, it was a very emotional scene here at Aspendale in the Bertrand family. And with me, a man that stayed with me all night. And Lex, no doubt you must be so pleased, and I'm sure still it's not through to you, that Australia 2 has won the elusive America's Cup.
Oh, Max, I still can't believe it. It's, I guess early in the program, it didn't seem possible, and then gradually it did, and over the last few months it just seemed more and more possible, and finally it's there. It's just unbelievable.
You were very worried about 3:30 Eastern Standard Time when John made that very unusual move.
Yeah, I thought he let Connor off the hook, upwind. I thought he should have covered a lot harder, and I'd certainly like to know the reasons for what he did. He probably had good reasons for them, but he let him off the hook and got through him, and I just don't think that's right. But he certainly came back and won the race, and that's all that matters.
Dawn in Sydney, but just the calm before the storm at Middle Harbour Yacht Club, where moods of depression gave way to nail-biting optimism as Australia 2 pegged back the defender and finally took the lead. A night-long vigil was rewarded, and revellers weren't about to hold back their jubilation. In Sydney's streets, radios everywhere were tuned in on Newport.
It's going to be Australia 2. They are going to win it. Stand up, Australia.
Public transport even came to a halt, with commuters here glued to a televised race finish. Sailors or not, reaction was the same everywhere, or almost everywhere. While a spinnaker billowed from the town hall, Sydney's American National Club flew their flag at half-mast. But if American pride has suffered, here in Sydney there's no doubt the pride of the fleet today is Australia 2. She was also the toast of the town, especially in the Sydney Hilton's America's Cup bar, as Peter McCarthy reports.
The bar's been temporarily renamed the Australia's Cup Bar to commemorate Australia 2's win, and throughout today hundreds of hotel guests and the public helped celebrate. Outside the bar sits a butter carving of the old silver mug. Maybe the New York Yacht Club could use it to fill the gap they'll soon have in their trophy room. In the streets, the message of our win is everywhere, including consolations for the vanquished and no hard feelings. The well-known blackboard bard at a Crow's Nest service station summed up the situation in his usual punny manner. And at the US consulate, defeat was accepted with perhaps just a touch of disloyalty, but in the right spirit.
Australia had the, obviously, the better boat and the better crew, and they won. So all the best.
Who would have believed it? We're coming back after this break. If you're wondering, the New York Yacht Club says they'll present that old mug to Australia in a day or two. Well done to the boys from
The America's Cup, safely unscrewed from its plinth in the New York Yacht Club and meeting its new masters already.
This is the bolt that's kept the cup in place for 132 years.
This is the greatest thing you could do for our country, Australia.
Then the moment Alan Bond had waited 12 years for, a chance to flourish the cup before taking it back to Perth for at least 4 years. The applause was polite, the manners impeccable, but it all lacked spirit. A starchy occasion, far different from the lively celebrations last night when the victorious Australians and their fans took over Newport until the small hours.
In fact, the Australian squad are in a hurry to leave this lovely spot. The lease on their team house expires this week, and they intend to be out lock, stock, barrel and boat.
A summer of racing has left Newport with half a dozen unwanted 12-metre yachts. Liberty will probably be used for trials in 1988, but the others aren't needed. The big draw here remains Australia 2's wing keel. But within 48 hours, this boat too will be crated up and sent back to a hero's welcome.
The search for the three Pentridge